So I just wanted to do a quick video of my 2.5 week post open heart surgery, or cabbage times 3, or triple heart bypass. It's called many different things, but still results in the same thing. We'll run through a few things, what happened, my hospital stay, how I feel now, and at the end I'll just run through kind of feelings that I've been going through, emotions and things, and at the end I'll run through a few of the things that I bought that actually I found really useful, and I think you probably would do too. So about 26th of November, today is the 28th of December, I had a kind of not a fullness, but it felt like I woke up in the morning, I had a headache, a small headache, so I took a paracetamol, and it felt like it was lodged in my, stuck in my throat. So every now and again I'd take a little drink to see if I could dislodge it. I went out for a little bike ride in my gym, in my garage, and just kept getting this feeling in my throat, and I knew I had a lot to do that day, so I kind of gave up on that, and then left the gym, went and started clearing the garden, covering the garden furniture for the winter, that type of thing, sweeping up. And for that probably lasted about an hour, and during that hour kept getting this feeling in my throat still. Well, not my throat, this is my throat, more in the tube that runs down to your stomach maybe. Once I'd finished that job, then I went up to the bathroom, started cleaning the bathroom floor, and it was then that I suddenly had this uncomfortableness, tightness on my chest over my heart, and it stopped me doing what I was doing. It felt, didn't hurt, I don't think it hurt, but it felt wrong, and it felt wrong enough for me to stop what I was doing and to reconsider what was going on. And I started thinking to myself, is it kind of radiating down my arm? And at that point in time I thought it did. Whether it did or not, or whether it was just, I was just thinking it, I'm not sure, but I think it was. So I called for an ambulance, basically, and it was clear whilst I was on the phone to them that it was really, really busy that day, and they apologised for keeping me on hold. Then when I got through to somebody, they said, we don't know how long it'll take for someone to get out to you because we're so busy. And by this point, probably 5 to 10 minutes had gone past from when I felt the, let's call it, pressure, to me being on the phone to the ambulance service, and it had kind of eased, and I almost said, actually, it feels all right now, don't worry about it, I'll call back if I have any issues. But luckily I didn't, and the paramedic came. In the UK, you have various different people coming out, so you have this instant response paramedic who comes out as quickly as possible. Actually, it only took them 31 minutes in the end. So she came out. By this point, I was as normal as I could be, I suppose. The pressure had gone. I wasn't in any pain. I wasn't short of breath. She came in, did my blood pressure, that was normal. Did my pulse, that was normal. Did my oxygen stats, that was normal. Did my temperature, that was normal. So we were almost at the point of writing it off and calling it something else rather than a heart issue. But she said, one last thing I need to do is get the team out with the ECG machine just to check, because I need that to sign you off. So then she put the call in for them. So we were waiting for them to come. During that time, the pressure feeling came back. She whipped out her blood pressure cuff again, stuck that on. But by the time that was going, the pressure had gone again. It was kind of coming and going that quickly. Then what happened? So we sat down. She said, I'll leave the cuff on just in case it comes back, and I'll get the aspirin ready and I'll get the spray ready. Then it came back on. She sprayed, gave me aspirin to chew, did the blood pressure. There was a slight change in blood pressure, but nothing that she thought was major. And it was about this time that the ECG people turned up. They strapped me up to their machine, and the ECG readings weren't anything too abnormal. I think there was a slight change, and they run them a few times, and each time there was a slight change, but again, nothing seemingly major. And then they booked a taxi for me to go down to a hospital just to have the blood test done to see if my what's it called, troponin levels had increased, which is a sign of a heart issue. And about 2 minutes after they put the phone down to the taxi service, I started going really grey, very fidgety, couldn't rest. So they said, okay, I think we need to get an ambulance. So they changed the taxi into an ambulance, took me in. The doctors had already received the ECG readings, and they thought that was enough to get me in, get more tests done. Anyway, the troponin blood test, which is, I think 50 is the cutoff point. Anything less than 50 seems to be okay. 50 and above means that there's an issue, basically, that needs checking out. And mine was bang on 50. And it was at that point they started talking about, we're treating you for a heart attack. Now, I still find it hard and difficult to believe, because this was the 26th of November. The 25th of November before, absolutely no problems whatsoever. I was on no medication. My blood pressure was always fine. I'm not diabetic. Perfect weight. It's just in good health. And pretty much always have been. And then all of a sudden, bang, and they start talking about heart attack. It made absolutely no sense to me. And so I was kind of against it. Probably still am a little against it, if I'm honest with myself, but I know now that's probably a stupid thing to be. But when you're always healthy, all of a sudden to have a heart attack, it just doesn't make any sense. Or at least at that point in time, it made absolutely no sense. And I couldn't understand it. Well, one of the questions that the nurses were asking me was, do you have family issues, like a father or mother, brother or sister having heart issues under the age of 60 or something like that? And I never knew my dad, my real dad. He'd left before I was born. I managed to track him and his family down later in life. He'd already died by this point in time, but I'd had a few conversations with my half-brother. One of those conversations was, are there any health issues I need to be aware of? And he just said that my dad had heart valve replacement at the age of 40 due to industrial problems, maybe breathing in fumes, that kind of thing. And so I'd written that off. That wasn't, an hereditary thing. That was just something that happened to him. I'd kind of actually forgotten about it, if I'm fair. Then what happened? I told the doctors this. The doctors said it's not the same thing. Having a needing a heart valve replacement isn't the same as heart disease. So they were even discounting it. It was only a couple of days later when I pushed my half-brother for more information. He told me that my half-brother, had had heart and liver disease at the age of 32. I still don't know exactly what that was or how that manifested itself, but why he didn't tell me this before, I've absolutely no idea. But obviously that's game-changing information. Then he also told me that after my father had had the heart valve replacement, he then had regular heart attacks until he died. He didn't die of a heart problem, he died of something else, I think. But again, information that would have been perhaps useful for me to have known 10 years prior, 10 or 15 years prior to me having my heart attack. So anyway, the doctors now were treating it as a heart attack, and I was kind of going along with the flow at this point in time, apart from the troponin blood test, which, as far as I was aware, was only 50 and was kind of borderline, really, as far as I was aware. We're just going with it. During the night, they took another blood test, and it wasn't until a day or two later they told me that the second troponin blood test went up to over 200. So obviously there was some heart issue that was a problem. But still, I was thinking, is there something else that explains this? Because one minute I'm healthy, the next minute I'm not. What's going on? And it looks like that wasn't the case. That even though I seemed healthy, inside things weren't as healthy as could be. So the first test was the blood test. Second test was the echocardiogram. That's like the when you're having a baby, they do the ultrasound. So it's like an ultrasound scan around your heart. Also measures the pumping from the sound waves and things. So had that test. I was fully expecting that to be perfect with no issues whatsoever. They said that I had something called an ejection fraction rate. I think that's what it's called, EF rate. The normal rate in the UK is 55 to 70%, something like ejection rate at rest. I think in America it goes down to 50 as normal. So in my mind, anywhere between 50 and 70 seems to be quite normal. Mine was, he said 45%, so there had been some damage to one of my, I think he said the left ventricle or something. By that point I wasn't paying that much attention. I just heard the word damage and 45%. He later came in and said it's between 45 and 50%, so it seems to be, it feels like it was almost fluid in as much as it's not that bad, so it's not that big of a problem in a way. That's how I saw it in my mind. But still, anything less than what it should be, I wanted to find out as much about it as possible. Lots of people who I found were suffering with ejection fraction rates of 10, 20%. So, me at 45 to 50 didn't seem like such a big deal. How that manifests itself going forward, I don't know yet. It almost seems to be on the back burner because of the heart bypass that I've had. So that was the second test. That was the echocardiogram. Although that news was not major in terms of it wasn't down to 10, 15%, it still felt pretty bad. And I was trying to figure out how I can live a normal life with an ejection fraction rate of 45%. So then came the next test. Seemed I kept flunking these tests. This next test was the angiogram. That's where they stick the catheter into your wrist or into your groin, stick the camera in, then inject some dye, and they see if any of the tubes or arteries are blocked. At this point I was thinking still, I had a pain in my chest, and I came in, we had the echocardiogram that showed slight issue. I don't feel like I've had a heart attack. I've had no problems since during this period of time. This was about the first week in hospital. By the end of the first week, this is when the third test was coming, which was the angiogram. I was fully expecting the angiogram to say there's nothing here. I was expecting then to go on to an MRI scan to see if they could figure out what went wrong in the first place. But after the angiogram, the consultant who was doing the angio came along, and whilst I was still led down looking at the screens, and explained that a couple of my arteries were pretty badly damaged, blocked, and not just blocked in you can get blocks in like a focal point. So if you imagine that's the tube, you might have a pinch there where there's a block, and so they come along with a stent and they balloon it and put a stent in, and then that's it. And so all that could have been done and dusted at the same time. The word they used for mine was diffuse or diffuse. So I had blockages all along. So they could have put stents in, but that would have been a lot of metal put in, basically almost all along the arteries. And they said, so the best result is to have a bypass. And he recommended a bypass surgery. And of course, I was going into this thinking there's nothing, they're not going to find anything. And then all of a sudden they tell me that it's really quite bad. And I think if I wasn't sat there looking and watching, and this is all being done at the same time, it wasn't like a break and then I go and see somebody else. This is all done and being done at the same time. They did the scanning. Immediately that stopped. He was talking to me about what we were seeing on the screen. I probably wouldn't have believed it if there'd been a gap, because it didn't sound like me. And I was healthy, no issues whatsoever. Had this pain in my chest. Since that, in this last week, have had no issues either. And now all of a sudden you're telling me that actually it's pretty bad. And I think that pretty much shocked everybody. The team that had been working with me, because I'd even been moved into a side room away from the big monitors and stuff. As soon as I had the angiogram, I was back on the main ward with the big machine monitoring my heart. I wasn't allowed to go and walk down to get a coffee anymore, which I had been doing up to that point, because it seemed as though it wasn't that big of a deal. All of a sudden, the angio has basically turned my life upside down. So that was scary. Going from possibly needing a stent, if anything, which is a minor procedure, being done and dusted whilst the things are in your arm, to having an open heart surgery. You can imagine how I felt. It wasn't great at all. So they said it'll take maybe a week or two to get that sorted out, and in the meantime I need to stay in hospital. I can't leave or go home or anything. So that's where I was up to at that point in time. I'm the type of person who likes to research everything. I like to be in control of everything, and they were using words and talking about operations that I'd never ever considered. So all of a sudden I was there's a lot of people out there who don't research things, and that's fine. I am the type of person who wants to do that, and so I did do it. I wanted to find out how I'd feel, what would happen. And it was whilst I was doing all that, I come across some videos of people who, a couple of weeks post-op, 3 weeks post-op, 4 weeks post-op, I found them really helpful, but there weren't many. So I thought that's why I do my own video, just to see if some of my words of wisdom might help some other people. So I was feeling quite shell-shocked, I think. Devastated is a word that we used a lot to go from being healthy to needing an open heart surgery. Just, it still makes no sense to me, even though I've had it done. None of this, I don't think, will ever make sense to me. At some point in time, I went from, there's those stages of grief where I can't remember what they are, but you disbelieve it. All those stages. It was like I was going through all these stages. At some point in time, my mindset went from, there really isn't anything else that can be done. All of the cardiologists I'm seeing are recommending me to have a bypass. None of them are now saying stenting is any good, and they had team meetings and everything about it. And so I resolved myself to, this is it. I don't have any other option. I just have to go along with it. It doesn't matter how much research I do, what other options are available. There were no other options available. It was just this. That's hard to get through when you're not used to doing like that. Usually, when I find myself in front of a wall, I like to find a way around it or a way through it. My wall in this case was the heart bypass surgery, and I couldn't find any way around it other than not having it done, and that was never really an issue, or never a consideration. So what happened then? I spent about a week probably from the angiogram to the time when they came in and said, okay, we're taking you to the next hospital where they do the operation. In that time, I knew it was going to happen, but it had been pushed to the back of my mind. But the moment they came in and said, okay, get ready, we're going to come and collect you in 2 hours to take you to the next hospital, it all came flooding back. I was crying. The emotions were running wild. I think I was pretty scared at that point. Scared for every reason possible. I remember the transportation from the hospital I was in to the specialist hospital I was going to. It was only about a 45-minute journey, but I was quiet, I was reserved. I think I was just in a state of shock. And then something really good happened. They put me in a room with one other person who was maybe a week or two post-op. He was staying in. There was something wrong. He needed to get his blood pressure under control, something. And he was basically kicking cans around. He wanted to go home by this point in time. And I saw him walk. So I normally wear glasses. I didn't have my glasses on, but he walked past my bed to talk to the nurse over here. And I was thinking, he didn't have a shirt on. And I was looking at his chest and I was thinking, is that a scar? Looks like a scar. But it looked like a scar that had been there for many, many years. And so I just imagined that he had been, because he was quite sprightly. He was walking over here, walking back, and I could, although I couldn't see him because there was a screen up, all the things we're taught about holding a pillow when you cough, getting out of bed slowly. I could hear him coughing, and I knew that he didn't have a pillow because when I went to the loo, I could see that there was nothing around him, and he wasn't grabbing for anything before he coughed. And when I could hear him get out of bed and get into bed, it was just normal. It wasn't like, oh, I get out of bed. It wasn't groaning or crashing around, or just get out of bed and got back in bed. So at that point in time, I was thinking, he must have had an operation a while ago. He's back in for something else. So I again, later on, I saw him walk past, and I started talking to him, and it was about 5 minutes now. It's about a minute or two into the conversation, because I was thinking that he'd had his operation a while, years ago. For him to be this sprightly and just have had the operation, that didn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think one of my questions must have been at some point in time, well, how long ago did you have your operation? And he said something like a week or 10 days ago. I was absolutely shocked. How can somebody, his scar didn't look like, see the top of my scar here, still got some scabbing on it, I suppose, or maybe still some dissolvable stitches. And I didn't have my glasses on, but it didn't look like this. It looked more like a scar that was a couple of years old. And he told me that his operation was within the last couple of weeks. I just expected everybody to be led flat out, not moving. And then when they do move, they move like this, very, very slowly. And so my mind entering this whole scenario was I'd be quite decrepit, old man laying in bed, not being able to do anything. So then suddenly seeing somebody who was my age, who was up and about, sprightly, talking as though nothing if you didn't know about it, you would never have known. And so it was like a life-altering moment at that point in time. I messaged my wife to say, I've just met somebody who's my age, had his operation a week ago, and he's moving around as though there's no issues whatsoever. And so I think if I hadn't have met him, I would have had difficulty sleeping that night because my operation was due the next morning. But having met him, I slept like a baby. All my worries seemed to dissolve quite quickly. And my wife and my son met him the next day, and again they couldn't believe it as well. So it was very therapeutic meeting him. Still don't know today whether that was planned or not. If it wasn't planned, it was a stroke of fortune and good luck. If it was planned, then well done to the hospital, because that was exactly the right thing that I needed at that point in time. And Lee, I've got Lee's number, and we've been in contact since my operation as well. He's doing well, I'm doing well. Lee, if you're watching the video, I'd just like to say thank you so much for being there that night. It completely changed my outlook on everything. Okay, so turned out my operation the next day was cancelled. Somebody called in sick, and it didn't work out. But they crowbarred me in the next day. Again, I was meant to be going in the following day, but they had a slot free, so they pulled me forward to an afternoon slot. And I remember going off for the operation. I was in quite good spirits. Looking back now, I'm surprised because I was going in for a major operation. So obviously wasn't thinking about it at that point in time. I was still thinking about Lee and about how he was, which I'm sure is good. So I had the operation, all went well. Apparently my wife and daughter came in and saw me whilst I was still asleep, all hooked up with the tubes and things. And some point in time after that, I must have been awake. They removed the thing that gets stuck down your throat. I don't remember that. I do remember waking up on the ICU ward and seeing a Christmas tree in front of me. And I must have been wearing some sort of face mask that was blowing like really loudly. I've seen people wear these face masks before where you can't hear them because the oxygen coming out is such a low dose of oxygen, I suppose. Whereas this, it felt like it was just blasting. And I remember thinking at the time, it's just what I need. It's normal. Don't worry about it. It's not an issue. So that happened. And then I think the way to cut the next few days down as much as possible. I think I spent 1 or 2 days in ICU. ICU had a one-to-one nurse, so one nurse looking after me and nobody else. So that there was a lot of care and attention given to me, which I was 100% for. I didn't feel like I could do very much. I think in the first couple of days, most people generally don't feel, you just feel a bit blah. I wasn't in any pain. Most of the time, I don't remember being in any pain whatsoever. Something happened a bit later on that caused a bit of pain, and I'll tell you about that in a second, but generally speaking, there's enough pain medication for that not to be an issue. After 2 days on ICU, if everything's okay, they send you down to high dependency ward, where I have a nurse who looks after 2 people, so me and one other, and that was brilliant as well. You know, hats off to the NHS in the UK. I can't fault the care I received at all. It was absolutely phenomenal, every bit of it. Some nurses were better at drawing blood and injections than others, but generally speaking, it was all very, very good. So then, maybe day 3 or day 4 of my recovery, I got out of bed to go and sit in a chair, and all of a sudden I got this pain in my chest, not over where my heart is, but more on the other side, and I couldn't. I was out of breath. I couldn't breathe in deeply, and my oxygen stat level was dropping quite significantly. So by this point, I wasn't on any extra oxygen. So they put a face mask on me, and that wasn't enough. Then they put some tubes up my nose, but it was blowing out warm oxygen. and it seemed to be it sounded like, when I told you I woke up and I could feel this was doing that, but warm air up my nostrils, and that wasn't a pleasant experience. I didn't like it at all, and this is where I felt some pain. I could feel pain in my chest, and that wasn't great. Luckily, somebody said, let's get an x-ray. X-ray showed that my right lung had collapsed. They call it a pneumothorax, and I had to get that fixed. So to fix that, you have to have a cut under your arm or by the side of your armpit, and they get this tube and they basically shove it with brute force down until it felt like the tube was reaching the bottom of where my lungs would be, bottom of where my lung would be. I suppose that's the best thing I can do. It's like a mini operation done under local anaesthetic. I was by my bed. I had to cover my face with this canvas thing. Of course, that was terrible. I'm not claustrophobic in any way whatsoever, but that was terribly claustrophobic because I had this breathing thing going that was already uncomfortable. You imagine that on top of this thing covering my head. A pain of having this pushed, because this was a painful procedure, and it's not unheard of, because of course when they go into your open heart surgery, they're collapsing your lungs anyway, so they're doing lots of things like this. So we had that. That probably set me back a few days. I think the rest of me was recovering well, but because I had this tube for maybe 3 or 4 days, I wasn't allowed to do as much as I could have done if I hadn't have had it. So that stopped me progressing to the next level of going to another type of ward, I suppose. So pneumothorax. Then came the day where they had to remove it. I was quite scared about that because the amount of pain involved in putting it in. I just imagine how can you get it out without any sort of pain, and you can't have local anaesthetic inside you. So I just imagined I was going to feel the brunt of this. In actuality, it was just an odd sensation. It coming out, it wasn't painful. Once it was out, had normal x-rays again. I think I also had a CAT scan, which caused a complication in itself. I had a cannula in my wrist by this point. When you do a CAT scan, CT scan, they inject this imaging solution or something into the cannula. It hurt a lot. I remember shouting out that it hurt, but nobody could hear me, or maybe it just hurts everybody. But since I've had it, the back of my wrist is pretty numb, and my fingers are a bit tingly. So I'm still investigating this, doing things. We're trying to ice it and massage it at the moment to see if that helps. And if it doesn't, in a couple of days' time, I'm going to call the hospital again and see if something can be done about it. Anyway, so I then had this area stitched up. So there were two. Once they pull the tube out, though, the problem then is that you have to cough to get everything going again. That is painful, and you're also aware that when you're coughing out, you can't breathe in, but you have to cough to get it all working. This was when they put the tube in first of all. You have to cough to get the lung reinflated. Scary, and painful. But it didn't last very long. But you can imagine you're trying to cough, but you can't take any air in because it's too painful. But you still have to cough. It's a vicious circle. Managed to do it though. Yay! So that was that. So that was the end of that. Then after another day, everything seemed to be stable. They sent me from the high dependency ward to a normal ward where I hardly saw a nurse. I think we saw a nurse 3 times in the night, once in the morning to take blood pressure or take bloods. But then they came and said everything seems to be okay, no issues. We're going to send you home later today. Then I went home. Been home since. So altogether, it was about a month, just under a month. I was in hospital. Should have been 3 weeks, or a little over 3 weeks. But given that I had this pneumothorax, it did put me back a little bit. So in terms of feelings, how I felt, where I've already told you about before the operation, it was devastating news, absolutely devastating. Then I eventually came to terms with what was going on as much as I possibly could do. Still makes no sense, no matter how much I want it to. When I got home, I was feeling quite emotional, cried a little bit, and I've got family all around me, are very supportive, but luckily they also had their own support network as well, and they very much needed it, friends and family, because it's not, although it felt like it was just me, in my mind I knew it wasn't just me. My wife needed help, my kids needed help, and so it was a very emotional time when I got back. Whilst after the operation, whilst I was in hospital, it was emotional, and when I got back, I still felt those emotions. Being back home though is so much better than being in hospital. So much better. I can't tell you how therapeutic it has been to be back home. How anybody can go through all of this without having somebody to help them, no idea. Even just down to I have to put these tight deep vein thrombosis DVT stockings on my legs. I wouldn't be able to do it by myself because we're not meant to push and pull. And the amount of effort it takes to get these socks on and off, which is just incredible. So I feel so much for people who have no one or limited help at hand. I really don't know how they do it. So in the last week since I've been home, it's been a week and a bit, but let's say a week. I go out for walks most days. Yesterday I did a mile. Today I did 1.4 miles. I felt absolutely fine. The reason why I've got the hat on is because it's pretty cold out there, and we've just got back from my walk, and I did try taking it off, but the hat hair thing is pretty bad, so I thought I'll leave it on. I wanted to get the video done. I've been wanting to do it for a few days now, and I just wanted to stop having excuses why I didn't do it, and I just wanted to get it done. So that's everything really. The triple heart bypass, how it happened, my hospital stay, my feelings, and I just made a couple of notes here. There's something in there. The complication I had, I think complications are normal and expected whilst in hospital. First couple of days, don't expect to feel yourself really. But I think early on in your recovery, you do go through quite a rapid increase of getting better. And I think there comes a point where it kind of plateaus a little bit, right? It goes a bit slower. And I haven't reached that point yet, luckily. I also had keyhole surgery on my leg to do the harvesting of the vein. So I'm so grateful that I didn't need a full cut all the way down my leg. You know, it's a little bit painful and tender and precious, I suppose, having the keyhole surgery. So goodness knows what it's like if you have a full cut. I'm just so glad I didn't need it. Anyway, let's move on to the things I bought recently that have made a massive change. So I bought a pill box, a 7-day pill box, and Sunday, so today, every Sunday, I empty out the pills for the week into the pill box, morning and evening, and it's so much easier just to do it all in one go. Then every day you just have to pop the lid on the day you need it, and what it costs less than £10, but it's so much easier. So pill box, brilliant purchase. Whilst I was in hospital, I was thinking I'm going to be like an old man. I'm going to need a reclining chair, and one even that doesn't just recline but also tilts you up as well to get out of the chair. In hindsight, I didn't need any help tilting to get out because I was able to do it. But I bought a recliner chair. I think it was about £200. To hire one for a month would have cost £400, so it made sense to buy a cheap one. And it's a remote control one, so it's electric. Also has a massage function that I haven't used yet, but if I need to sell it after I've finished using it, I'll sell it for £100, and it would have cost £100. But it's excellent. I have it on recline most of the time I'm sat in it. It just alleviates a lot of pressure around your body, and some people even sleep on the reclining chair. I think I did plan to when I first bought it, but but other people have bought like a pillow wedge to stick on their bed, and I never got around to doing that. I did plan to, but we just bought some extra pillows because I thought we're going to need them anyway, and I made a wedge but with pillows, and that's been absolutely fine. One thing I did notice is that my coccyx was quite sore from all the sitting in bed, all the sitting in the chairs that they want you to do. And I didn't realise it until I got in the taxi on the ride home from the hospital, and it felt like it was uncomfortable, like I was sitting on something in the taxi. And I remember thinking, I remember thinking I'm not in a position to be able to jump around and move and see what's underneath me. I'll just have to live with that uncomfortableness. We got out, and I sat in my recliner, and I felt the same uncomfortableness there. And I just put it down to the fact that it was a cheaper recliner with a massage thing, and maybe I was sitting on a massage head or something. And then I started thinking, actually, I went to bed that night, and I remember then again, it was painful where my coccyx was, and it was that same uncomfortable feeling. And we got a brilliant mattress, so I knew it wasn't the mattress. So the next morning I bought this coccyx cushion. I'll put links to all these down in the description so that you can see what it is I've bought, at least give you an idea of what it is. This coccyx cushion is unbelievable. I put it down when I got it, immediately opened it, put it on my reclining chair, sat down, and it was like instant relief. And I was expecting it to feel better, but I wasn't expecting it to feel as good. And it's got a great shape on it as well, so I can actually, when I go to bed, I put it on my bed. Just those are my pillows. I put it there, and it works brilliantly in bed too. So that was a fantastic purchase. Coccyx cushion. And then the last thing, we already had them, but really useful. Sorry, getting a bit tired now. Really useful neck pillow. Just useful. I go to bed with it. I sit in a reclining chair with it. Just make sure that I don't move around too much and my neck is supported. Just one thing, of course, that yawn then reminded me. Just don't do too much. I think I talked to Lee out a few days after I got out of hospital, and he said that I think the thing is, Lee was feeling so good in himself. He overdid it in the first few days of coming out of hospital, and so he told me not to do it, and I'm glad he did, because it is so easy to overdo it and just forget, because not kind of is constantly on your mind, but it's not always constantly on your mind, in as much as you're always thinking about it and holding you back. I'm probably making it hold me back more than Lee did, because he felt so much better so quickly. But he told me not to overdo it, so I've been pulling myself back quite a lot. And one of those things is just resting in the afternoons. So we go out for a walk around midday, have lunch either before or after, and then in the afternoon I just rest, and that seems to be okay. Okay, that's it then. That's my 2.5 week journey so far. If you've got any questions, just let me know in the comments below. Hopefully I'm going to do a few videos. I'm not going to go overboard with this, but I want to give the same peace of mind to somebody, at least one person, the same way that I got some peace of mind from some people. Okay, thank you very much.